Welcome to Stoic Mastery, where we delve into the ancient philosophy of Stoicism and explore its practical applications in modern life. The Stoics believed that grief is a natural and inevitable part of life. They recognized that we will all experience loss and sorrow at some point in our lives, whether it's the death of a loved one, the end of a relationship, or the loss of a job. However, the Stoics also believed that it's not the events themselves that cause us pain, but rather our judgments and beliefs about those events. According to Stoic philosophy, we have control over our thoughts and attitudes, and by changing our perspective on grief, we can alleviate our suffering. The Stoics taught that we should accept our emotions and acknowledge them without being consumed by them. We should view grief as an opportunity to grow and learn, rather than as a source of endless suffering. One famous Stoic who embodied this philosophy was Seneca, who wrote extensively on the topic of grief. In his essay on consolation, Seneca counseled his friend Helvia, who was grieving the death of her son. He urged her to focus on the happy memories she had of her son and to remember that he had lived a full and happy life. Seneca also reminded her that death is a natural part of life and that we should be grateful for the time we have with our loved ones. In essence, the Stoics believed that grief is not something to be avoided or denied, but rather a natural part of the human experience. By accepting our emotions and changing our perspective on grief, we can transform it into an opportunity for growth and self-discovery. The Stoics believed that it's not enough to simply understand their philosophy intellectually. We must also put it into practice in our daily lives. When it comes to coping with grief and loss, the Stoics offered several practical strategies that we can use to find solace and inner peace. One of the most important Stoic practices for coping with grief is the practice of gratitude. The Stoics believed that gratitude is the antidote to grief because it helps us focus on what we have, rather than what we've lost. We can cultivate gratitude by taking time each day to reflect on the things we're grateful for, whether it's our health, our relationships, or the simple pleasures of life. Another powerful Stoic practice for coping with grief is the practice of negative visualization. This involves imagining the worst-case scenarios and preparing ourselves mentally for them. By doing this, we can develop greater resilience and fortitude, which can help us cope with unexpected losses. Finally, the Stoics emphasized the importance of staying grounded in the present moment. They believed that much of our suffering comes from dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, and that by staying focused on the present, we can find greater peace and contentment. Mindfulness meditation, which involves paying attention to the present moment without judgment, is a powerful way to cultivate this mindset. By practicing gratitude, negative visualization, and mindfulness, we can develop the inner resources we need to cope with grief and loss. The Stoics believed that these practices can help us not only survive in difficult times, but thrive and grow stronger as a result. At the heart of Stoic philosophy is the idea that we should live our lives according to virtue. The Stoics believed that the ultimate goal of life is to cultivate moral excellence, or arete, which encompasses qualities such as wisdom, courage, justice, and compassion. In the face of grief and loss, the Stoics believed that it's even more important to cultivate these virtues, as they can help us find meaning and purpose in difficult times. For example, by cultivating wisdom, we can gain a deeper understanding of the nature of grief and loss, and come to see them as part of the natural order of things. By cultivating courage, we can face our grief head-on, rather than avoiding or denying it. By cultivating justice, we can act with compassion and kindness towards others who are also suffering. And by cultivating compassion, we can find a sense of connection and empathy with all living beings. One famous Stoic who embodied these virtues in the face of grief was the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. In his Meditations, Aurelius reflects on the impermanence of life and the inevitability of death, yet remains steadfast in his commitment to living a virtuous life. He writes, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live according to nature." In essence, the Stoics believed that the pursuit of virtue is the key to a meaningful and fulfilling life, even in the face of grief and loss. By living in accordance with our highest values and principles, we can find a sense of purpose and direction, even in the most difficult of times. In addition to cultivating virtues, the Stoics also placed great importance on the practice of acceptance. They believed that much of our suffering comes from resisting the natural order of things and trying to control the uncontrollable. Instead, the Stoics urged us to accept what is beyond our control and focus on what we can control, namely, our own thoughts and actions. When it comes to grief and loss, the Stoics believed that acceptance is key to finding inner peace. Rather than denying or avoiding our grief, we should acknowledge it and accept it as a natural part of the human experience. By doing so, we can avoid adding unnecessary suffering to our pain. One famous Stoic who embodied the practice of acceptance was the philosopher Epictetus. Despite facing many hardships in his own life, including being born into slavery and suffering from a debilitating physical disability, Epictetus remained steadfast in his commitment to living a virtuous life. He famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In essence, the Stoics believed that by accepting what is beyond our control and focusing on what we can control, we can find greater peace and serenity in the face of grief and loss. While we may not be able to control external circumstances, we can control our own reactions to them, and in doing so, cultivate a sense of inner resilience and strength. One of the most powerful practices in Stoic philosophy for coping with grief and loss is the practice of gratitude. The Stoics believed that by cultivating a sense of gratitude for what we have, we can shift our focus away from what we've lost and towards what we still have to be thankful for. In the face of grief and loss, it can be easy to become consumed by negative thoughts and feelings. But by intentionally focusing on what we have to be grateful for, we can begin to shift our perspective and find greater peace and contentment. One famous Stoic who emphasized the practice of gratitude was the philosopher Seneca. In his writing, Seneca frequently urged his readers to focus on the good things in their lives and to cultivate a sense of gratitude for them. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements if it were all well invested." In essence, the practice of gratitude is a powerful tool for coping with grief and loss, as it helps us focus on the positive aspects of our lives, even in difficult times. By intentionally cultivating a sense of gratitude, we can find greater peace, contentment, and resilience in the face of adversity. In conclusion, Stoic philosophy offers a wealth of practices that can help us cope with grief and loss in a healthy and meaningful way. By cultivating virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and compassion, we can find a sense of purpose and direction, even in difficult times. By practicing acceptance, we can find greater peace and serenity in the face of what we cannot control. And by cultivating gratitude, we can shift our focus towards what we have to be thankful for, rather than what we have lost. Ultimately, the Stoics believed that by living in accordance with our highest values and principles, we can find greater meaning and fulfillment in life, even in the face of adversity. As the philosopher Epictetus once said, "Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well." So, in the face of grief and loss, let us remember to cultivate virtues, practice acceptance, and cultivate gratitude. By doing so, we can find greater peace, contentment, and resilience, and live a life of purpose and meaning, even in the most difficult of times. Thank you for watching this video from Stoic Mastery. We hope that you found it informative and helpful in your journey towards mastery of Stoicism.